this time, I'm going to rewrite the quadratic formula up here, but I'm going to add this part. In other words, the quadratic formula only works when you have the equation in this form, in the same way the zero product property only works if you have the one side equal to 0. So whether you're using factoring to solve or the quadratic formula, and for that matter, even completing the square, it's not bad. We need to make one side equal to 0 first. And sometimes we have to do some other math. So if you look at A, it's factored, but the other side isn't equal to 0. So we can't use the zero product property. What we could do is FOIL this out and multiply everything here. That will give me a 2x squared. My outside is minus 2x plus 1x would be minus x. And my last term's minus 1 equals 5x. So I multiply things out, and now, whoops, equals positive 5x. There we go. And now I can move everything over to one side. So I subtract 5x minus 6x minus 1 equals 0. Now factoring is always more difficult when you have an a value. The quadratic formula works even if you could factor it. Okay, so sometimes when there's an a value, some students go, you know what, I find that factoring harder. It's harder to check to see if it works mental math-wise. Maybe I'll go to the quadratic formula right away. As far as choosing to use completing the square, when you have an a value, can you see if you divided everything by 2, you'd get a fraction. I probably would avoid completing the square for that reason as well. The quadratic formula seems to be a good choice, and it's already in the form. So then my b value is negative 6, so when I write negative b, I get positive 6. Negative 6 times negative 6 is 36 minus 4. A is 2, C is negative 1 over 2 times A. And if we simplify this, x is equal to 6 plus or minus the square root of, that'll be 36 plus 8, which is 44, over 4. And now that is the right answer. But we always have to write things in lowest form. Can you simplify the square root of 44? Yes. That'll be 6 plus or minus, it's 4 times 11, so that'll be 2 root 11 divided by 4. Can you simplify your numbers? You're dividing by 4. Not everything divides by 4, but everything would divide by 2. So if you divided everything by 2, that would give you 3 plus or minus the square root of 11, all divided by 2. And this is our answer in simplest terms. So example 2 is really trying to get us to understand that we need to have this purple box form before we can solve anything. And I'll do B right beside. Okay. And we can also play around with our equation if we don't like how it looks. So in B, technically I can make the one side equal to 0 by subtracting 3. Would you agree? I technically can use the formula. Do you see that your A value is a fraction? It's a half. Your B value is a fraction. It's negative 5 over 4. And your C value is a nice number of 3. You are totally allowed to do the next step and plug it into the formula with the fractions. However, if I gave you an option not to use fractions in the formula, would you choose that? Probably. So it's an equation. What you do to one side, you do to the other side. Can you see something you could multiply by? to get rid of a fraction?
2.
You could multiply by 2. Would that get rid of both of them?
No. Multiply by 4 to get rid of
Multiply by 4 would get rid of both of them. Now, you don't have to get rid of both of them all at once, but if you can, that's kind of nice. I usually look at what could multiply and get rid of both of them. So I'm going to take everything and multiply by 4. Well, 4 times a half, that'll become 2x squared. The 4 times 5 fourths will just become minus 5 and minus 12. And 0 times 4 is still 0. And now we have successfully gotten rid of our fraction. Okay. Do you want to try to factor, or do you want to use the quadratic formula? Does it look like one you'd like to factor? Yeah? Okay, go for it. We could factor this if we can. Some of you might say, oh, I don't feel like factoring this. And I'm going to show you how your answer from the quadratic formula, this one can be factored. So maybe I'm just going to leave space right here that we could factor it. And then down here below, I'm going to go to my quadratic formula. And I'm going to show you where your quadratic formula tells you, oh, you know you could have factored it. There's a moment in the quadratic formula where it talks back to you and says, you know, you could have factored this. It's all right that you didn't, but you could have. And I'll show you where the formula tells us that. So if I was using the formula, I would have negative b, which will be 5, plus or minus. Negative 5 squared is 25, minus 4, my a value is 2, my c value is negative 12, all over 2 times 2, which gives me x equals 5, plus or minus the square root of, and what do we have here? 8 times 12, 96, plus 25, 121. Over 2 times 2, 4. Okay, and just going to zoom back out so that it's not so small for you guys. This is where your quadratic formula laughs at you and says, you could have factored. Because what's the square root of 121? It is a perfect square. It's a nice number. It's just 11. Oops. So I have 5 plus or minus 11 over 4. Can you see that if you did the plus 11, you would have 16 divided by 4, which is 4. If you do the minus 11, 5 minus 11 is negative 6. Negative 6 over 4 would reduce to negative 3 over 2. Okay. Check. Sometimes, though, if you feel bad that you used the quadratic formula and you got the answers, you can cheat and show your work as factoring. This is how. Do you see that I know the answers are 4 and negative 3 over 2? If this is 4, what would have to be here? X minus 4, right? And if this is x, does it make sense this has to be 2x? And if this is minus 4, this would have to be plus 3. Does this give me negative 3 over 2? It does. I just didn't factor it by factoring it not the right way, but I used my answers to get my factoring. It's kind of cool. So we could have factored this one. It's not wrong to use the quadratic formula, but if you get a perfect square inside the square root, your question is telling you, you could have factored. It might have been quicker, but maybe this mental math was, you didn't feel like it right now. And sometimes we're like that, right? What does the formula allow you to do? Sort of be more like a robot and have to do less mental math. And some of you like being robots sometimes. So, it's not bad. It gives us the right answer, but there could have been better ways to do it. Okay. have lots of practice. You can circle all the questions from 7 to 12.